Hi, how's it going everyone? Welcome back. Welcome to the channel if you are indeed. A bit of a while since the last uploaded, so apologies for that. Didn't really help the fact there was no football at the weekend. But today, I thought being as there's been about 6 games in the Premier League, we've got a pretty good idea about how each team is going to perform this season. And you can also get a very good idea about your initial predictions, whether you've made some absolutely horrific calls. Plus also the transfer window is closed since I last did my predictions, and that's the same for most people. So it is going to be interesting to see how different it is. These were my initial predictions I did at the start of the season. There's already quite a few changes I want to make. I want to put Fulham up a bit more. I think you have to be honest, Forest might be a bit lower than that. Might be being a bit too optimistic there. Villa probably be a bit lower. There's quite a few. That is what I initially came up with. So I'm not just showing you my predictions right now and you can think, oh great, I've seen it. I'll go. No, I want view time. So thanks. Aston Villa. We're going to go in a random order, I think. Aston Villa can go in this category. I have planned this out. I'm not just doing it off the top of my head. I think Villa, under Gerrard, that's going to be what is going to let them down. If they can get rid of Gerrard and get in a manager that probably isn't to the job, because their squad quite clearly has talent in it. It has a lot of talent throughout that team. There's definitely a few weaknesses throughout it. Maybe striker, get someone that's going to consistently bag goals. But ultimately, I think that there's quite clearly talent there for them to get top 10 in the Premier League. And I just don't think Gerrard has the tactical mind to get it out of them. And I just don't think he's the right man. And I think he'll be gone pretty soon, hopefully. Not before Forest play Villa soon. Next up, we'll go with Fulham. I think Fulham can join them in this category. I think they will be a bit lower than them as well. I honestly would love to see Fulham survive, and it's going to be a very tough game this Friday. I will of course be vlogging it, so stay tuned for that. I'm looking forward to that. If you do see me at the game, if you're a Forest fan, then please feel free to come up to me and get a pre-match prediction if you want, or just say hi. I really like some of the signs they've made. I think Andres Pereira at this kind of team could do really, really well. Pelini is coming from Sporting. That's a very high quality kind of team to sign a player from when you're newly promoted. And Babu's coming to replace Nico Williams, of course. I love the fact that they've finally signed another striker behind Mitrovic and Vinicius. So there's sorted out the squad depth issues, which I was concerned about. And I think Fulham will do alright this season. Alright, next up we'll go for a team in Europe, I think. We'll go for West Ham. Now, hear me out. They may have started badly, but I think by the end of the season they will be up there again. Maybe not in Conference League, they might be 8th, because that category actually does cover 8th place, of course. But I just don't see a world where West Ham don't get into at least the top 10. Because West Ham are signing really well this summer, signing the likes of Paqueta, Cornet, a lad from PSG that I can't pronounce his name too properly. I think they've done really well, and they've also brought in a striker in Skamaka, who probably ought to be getting more game time than what he is. They've only won 1 game this season away at Villa, but I think overall they will definitely pick up throughout the season. I think maybe in the Conference League it might hinder them a little bit, especially given the fact that I think they can go very far in the Conference League as well. But ultimately I think they'll still be up there. Okay, let's fill mid-table then. Let's go for Brentford. I think Brentford will be about 10th. So I'm not actually saying an exact position here. I will actually order it where I think they'll come. So I think Brentford will be 10th place, which would be a huge achievement if they got the top 10. Love their transfers this summer. I've already gone over that before, and I just love what Brentford are about right now. And they have the potential to become a very, very stable, solid Premier League side. They could do something similar to how Brighton are these days, just being a really, really competent, difficult side to beat. Speaking of Brighton, we'll put Brighton next. I think they will actually be just above Brentford, so we'll do that. Now, obviously, they've lost Graham Potter. That could be quite a huge make or break moment for them. I think it quite heavily depends on who they bring in to replace him, to be honest. If they get in a good manager, then I think they can still do well. They've still quite clearly got the quality. I thought losing Cucurella and Bissouma would really hit them, but it seemingly didn't, because they're 4th in the Premier League right now. Being as we just mentioned Potter there, we'll speak about his current club, Chelsea. And this, I literally changed this before I started recording. I cannot decide whether Chelsea are going to get top 4 or not. And I ended up putting them 5th, which would be a major underachievement. However, would it? Because this is the problem I have with Chelsea. I don't really know what Chelsea are about right now, because with their new owners, which I'm not at all convinced by, seemingly is one of these classic American owners that comes over, doesn't really get the sport, doesn't really love the club that he's bought, really wants to buy the club, if you get what I mean. They're not invested enough. I mean, he suggested to Tuchel apparently playing 4-4-3, which, you know what, I think is a great idea. Let's get that extra player in the team, because why not? Play 12 aside. With the owners and also getting rid of Tuchel under incredibly harsh circumstances, according to Fabrizio Romaro's reports, Tuchel and Chelsea's owners do not share the same vision. Well, don't know about you, mate, but I would have thought being at Chelsea, win titles, he won the Champions League, don't share the same vision. I think that's a bit hard, quite frankly. However, Potter is an incredibly good replacement, but whether he can get this team working or not straight away, with the amount of players they bought in, they spent a lot of money in the summer. Again, another reason why it was very difficult to sack Tuchel that they did. Okay, let's do a relegated team then. It's got to be... I've got to go Bournemouth, it has to be, unfortunately. They played incredibly well against us the other week. Fully deserved to beat us. I had a lot of respect from Bournemouth fans as well, which I didn't really expect, so thank you for that. But they fully deserved to beat us, 100%. But they're not going to play Forest week in, week out, and ultimately they didn't recruit very well in the summer. This is exactly why Scott Parker left. I didn't think Scott Parker was the right man anyway, but it might actually be a blessing that he went. Now, the caretaker boss is doing a good job. I forgot what his name is. O'Neill, is it? And ultimately, I think a bit like Brighton, it depends who they get in to really say whether they're going to do anything or not this season, whether they could survive. If they're getting a good manager, then yeah, why not? Let's go for it, Bournemouth. But I just feel the overall quality is not as good as the other teams, not even at all. Okay, let's fill the top category then. Let's go with Tottenham. I think they'll be about 4th place. Actually, no, we'll go with 3rd. So I think Spurs, I was going to put them 2nd, to be honest, because I think they're looking really, really strong. Their depth is absolutely stacked. Conte ball, honestly, I love what Spurs are about. But I think what we literally saw yesterday against Sporting kind of shows that Spurs are still Spurs. They can still easily lose games that they should be winning. It's the only real blip they've had this season, and you know, it isn't a completely disastrous result, but ultimately I think it is a reminder that Spurs are still not the finished article. Okay, next up we'll do Forest then. I'm going to put us in this category, and unfortunately I think we will be that 17th team. It could be 16th, could be 15th. I think we will survive, but I think it's going to be really, really difficult. And really, really narrow, to be honest. I think at first we were all getting a bit too carried away, me included for sure, saying that we were going to survive kind of without really fearing relegation, but that was always going to be the case. We were never ever going to have it easy. This is the Premier League. It's getting harder and harder every single season, signing lots of players. Everyone says it. It could backfire on us because it could lead to an unhappy dressing room. How can they all play? And they've got to gel together. However, there's quite clear signs to me that they are gelling, but they've got to really hurry up with that, in my opinion. And I think really another thing with signing so many players is even the managerial side of things. They've got to work out the best system. I think against Bournemouth, that's probably what Cooper's thinking was. I want to try QRT in midfield with Yates. How does that work? And then next game he's probably going to revert back to O'Brien and Mangala. He might even play Freuler. So he just wants to see what works best, especially in the midfield, because we've signed so many of them. So it's kind of trial and error, but you can't really afford to have that in the Premier League. I think overall, we do have the quality and we do have the manager to survive the Premier League. Okay, let's do the top 4 again. Let's go for Arsenal. I honestly could see Arsenal getting 2nd, which is an unbelievable achievement, and I did not expect to say that. Where did I put Arsenal in my initial predictions? I think it was 6th, wasn't it? I think it was. To put them up to 2nd. Wow. I think we actually saw this being built the last few seasons. If you go back to the lockdown season, Arsenal were really poor. Then they finished 8th in the Premier League, didn't even get Europe. But I think even in that season, we saw the building blocks in place. The younger players coming through, Saka, Smith Rowe, Martinelli, Sarabia, being loaned out quite a few times and developing. Now look at him. He seemingly is the finished article for them. And then, last season was again more building. They got back into Europe. This season, some of the likes of Jesus and Zinchenko, I think, has really, really accelerated them to that next level. They're born winners, those two. And I think Arteta is also improving all the time as a manager and proving the doubters wrong. And Arsenal suddenly look like a really, really good prospect. We'll talk about United next, actually. I think United probably will miss out on the top four. I could see them getting it. I will say that right now. United and Chelsea could easily get the top four, even in their current state. But two teams have got to miss out, and I'm going to put United to miss out. Hear me out. United had that dreadful start where it looked like they were going to be just as bad, if not worse, than what they were last season. But they've really turned the corner the last 5 games, won 5 in a row, which is unbelievable. They may have lost to Sociedad in the Europa League, but in the league, couldn't really go any better the last several games. Dropping Maguire and Ronaldo was a blessing for them. And I think also, after losing those 2 games, they kind of kicked them to actually sign a few players. Signing Anthony and Casemiro were musts, and they did just that. And I think Anthony's going to be a real special player for them, to be honest. But it's a work in progress, quite clearly. Even with those signings, even with Ten Hag, there's still players in this team that aren't good enough, and there's still quite clearly frailty in this team. They have to rely on certain players. So I don't think they can rely on the same 11 the whole season. Okay, Crystal Palace can go into mid-table. I think they probably will be about 12th. I think Palace, they've been a good side the last few years, building under Vieira. Losing Gallagher obviously was a big miss for them. And I think Palace have suffered this season a little bit. They've had a few too many draws. Saw Zaha come out in an interview after they drew with Brentford, and he was really frustrated that they didn't keep going and going. They kind of sat back and defended, and I think it kind of sums up Palace really, dropping points that they shouldn't be, and just that general inconsistency. Only won 1 game this season. I was initially going to put them in the top 10, but I don't think they'll quite do that. Joining them in mid-table, Wolves, and I think I'll put them just ahead of Crystal Palace. Wolves have recruited well. Guedes, Nunes, and Diego Costa, namely a few of them. Costa maybe 33, but he'll offer that depth and experience up front. It could be a big signing for them, and it's not long term. Honestly, they may have declined the last couple of seasons from chasing European football quite as convincingly, but getting in Guedes is a huge statement of intent, and I think that is showing that Wolves are still very much a team that want to be aiming high, and I think keeping Neves is a huge statement as well. Defensively, they've lost a few players. Cody and obviously Bolly have left as well, but ultimately I still think they've got a good team, and they could get top 10 again. I think they should be getting top 10, but maybe the manager isn't quite up to it. We'll have to wait and see. I'm going to put Everton in the relegation zone, and I think they will be 18th. Now, maybe this is me being a bit biased, not wanting to put Forest there, because Everton do quite clearly have a good team, but I just feel Everton, they're still not out of the woods. I think it's going to be the lack of goals and the manager that's going to cost them. Up front, you've got Calvert-Lewin is injury prone, Rondon is not good enough, and Mopé, who they needed, but he's been inconsistent for Brighton the last few years. Why should he be consistent for Everton? I've not been a fan of Lampard for quite some time, so I don't see why that would change. They're going to get a few results here and there, but they haven't got Richarlison anymore to carry them along. I don't think McNeil is the answer to replace him. They do have Anthony Gordon, but he's only really like 1 transfer away from leaving Everton. Midfield-wise, they're stacked. Garner, Decore, Allen, Onana, Davis. It's unreal the amount of options they have there. Brought in Cody and Tarkowski at the back. I think just surviving is going to be Southampton. I think Southampton probably will actually finish above Forest. It's questionable whether you would want to put us either way around. To be honest, I think Villa and Fulham are out of this discussion for relegation. I think it's between these 4 plus the other team that I'm going to pick. Now, Southampton, I think they've actually had quite a decent start to the season. Got some good results. Beating Chelsea was hugely impressive. But losing Lavia to injury for 6 weeks, short term, is going to hit them a little bit. Love the signing of Jarbo. I think he's a brilliant player. They've got a good team, but they have always had that air of inconsistency the last several seasons, and something doesn't feel right putting Southampton any higher than this category. So, I'm going to do it. Leicester. I think this would be disastrous if they get relegated, but I think I've got every right to put them there. They've got Danny Ward in goal, who is not at all up to it in any way, shape or form. Iverson sits on the bench and is better than him in my opinion. Not playing the Prem, but at least give him a go for goodness sake. Like, Ward's nowhere near good enough. didn't sign any players in the summer until the last day of the season, purely because they sold one of their stars for £75 million, so they actually had a budget to work with. They could quite easily lose Tielemans and Maddison in the next transfer window. Barnes is probably going to be on the radar to some teams. Vardy's not going to be around much longer, and he's not what he was either. Rodgers is out of his depth as well. I just think it's a bit of a mess. They shouldn't be getting relegated. If they get a new manager, they could survive. Top four then, it's obviously got Man City up here, hasn't it? They're going to win the league. They've got Haaland. 12 goals in 8 games is just ridiculous. Need I say any more? Yeah, probably about it really, isn't it? City are going to win the league. It's pretty boring at this stage. Now, I was very, very close between Chelsea and Liverpool for who gets 4th spot, but I had to go with Liverpool in the end. I just felt it was wrong to drop them out. I was kind of thinking, don't put them there just because it's Liverpool, but they have got some good results along the way. They beat Ajax yesterday, which shows that they're still a good side, because Ajax played really well against them. And I think Liverpool, it's been a weird start to the season. That 9-0 winning late against Newcastle, that hammered against Napoli, and a few too many draws here and there. Strange start to the season for Klopp. People were kind of turning on Klopp in ways, but I think that's ridiculous to do that. I think the midfield is kind of the issue for Liverpool. Some players that are injury prone, some players that are too old, and they needed to sort it out, and I think that is their ultimate goal. That's what they need to be doing next when it comes to transfers, kind of freshening up the middle of the pitch, in my opinion. 2 teams left then. We're going to go with Newcastle in this 8th spot, and you know what we'll do Leeds now? We'll put Leeds in this zone actually. No, actually they'll be here 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Yeah, they'll be this zone here. So yeah, we'll talk about Newcastle here. Obviously a club full of huge ambition and huge promise. It's a huge ask for them to get European football straight away. And I think with Eddie Howe, with the signings they've made, I think Isak, it could be a huge signing. One that could make or break Newcastle's season. And I think it could really be the difference between whether they get Europe and don't get Europe. Having that consistent goal scorer up front. Wilson's injuries are going to kind of be a bit of a liability, and Chris Wood is not as good as Isak. Getting someone as good as him is great. With Leeds, I love the recruitment. They've done some incredible recruitment business in the summer, bringing in Aronson, Sinistera, Adams and Rocker in midfield. I think that's honestly amazing business, genuinely amazing. Up front kind of is a bit of a concern for me because Bamford's injury prone, and they've only really got Gelhardt and a younger lad in Greenwood up front, but they seem to make do. You know, Rodrigo can play up front as well. Maybe an out-and-out striker might have not been a bad thing for Leeds, but I still think overall they're in a significantly better place than where they were towards the last few months of last season. But ultimately, they are my updated Premier League predictions after 6 match weeks, and ultimately after the transfer window has closed. It is actually incredible how much I've changed that. And normally when I do tier lists, I don't put it in a specific order for each tier, but that is the order I will put it in. And please let me know in the comments below, what do you think of my predictions? Let me know your predictions in the comments as well. Fulham vlog at the weekend, of course. I'll see you very soon, everyone.